All right. Well, welcome to the September 28th meeting of the Concord Planning Board. This meeting is being recorded, and we'll start out by taking a roll call of the planning board members present. So I'll go around the room first. Linda.
Present.
Andrew.
Here.
Haley.
Here.
And Kristen.
Here.
And I am here as well. Okay, our first item that we have on the agenda tonight is further consideration of the recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals of the application of Concord Housing Authority for a special permit and site plan review under sections 10, 11.6 and 11.8 of the zoning bylaw of the 2-unit planned PRD at 365 Commonwealth Avenue. And we discussed this last meeting, and Elizabeth, you prepared a draft opinion letter. Thank you very much. Linda, I saw you made some comments. I had a couple of other small wordsmithing comments, a little bit of a jumbled verbiage that came through when you, Elizabeth, when you pulled the response from the town engineer. But otherwise, let me ask the board if anybody had any comments or suggestions or concerns with Elizabeth's draft letter. Okay, I had one question, Elizabeth, or Kristen, were you? No, for some reason you're highlighted. Okay, one question. A couple places there were the language the board recommends. And this is a question I probably should have asked 3 years ago. What's the effect of us saying we recommend an action rather than saying it should be it's a condition, prior to issuance of the building permit or something like that? And the two places that jumped out to me were around the trees and around the dark sky compliant lighting, the review of the cut sheets for lighting.
So generally, I try to follow up a recommendation with a condition.
Okay.
And in the language, so just for the dark sky is going to be somewhere down in here. And it might be clearer. When I'm missing it.
I'm looking for it on my local copy. I'll see if I can beat you to it. Okay. Oh, well, you do say have a condition 13. The applicant shall provide lighting cut sheets for all exterior light fixtures for approval. Okay. So then,
okay.
That's 13. Okay. So I see how the recommendation becomes a condition. What about on the trees? And I know that that's a little softer because we're talking about effectively the town doing it, and which would be strange if this was a sort of unrelated developer, but of course being CHA, that's not the case. So can you just tell me how you envision that happening with adding some trees, and maybe we can also hear from Mr. Eifler if you guys have discussed it. Okay.
So you are correct that it is kind of worded, I'm going to say a little softer, because it is not a condition solely for the applicant to meet. And there is going to be involvement and funds from the town, from the tree preservation mitigation fees. So the wording up here kind of is that softer version.
Fair enough.
But
yeah.
Then down in the conditions,
it's at 19, I think. They shall coordinate. So I get, and that makes sense to me.
Yeah. So what will happen is there's various conditions and various staff. So before the building department issues a certificate of occupancy for the structure, they go to each staff person in that appropriate division or department and says, are you has condition 15, 17, 19 been satisfied? And that staff, that staff person replies back, yes, yes, no. So in this case, 19 would be a condition that the Building Inspections Division would ask, has the applicant coordinated with you on planting the trees?
Right.
And so that's kind of the how, well, at least since I've been back with the town, which, oh my God, it's been 6 years already. Each condition is, the timing and the, who has to do it and when it has to happen, and, who has to, the checks and balances. So that's what condition 19, but since it is the town and it is town funds, it's not worded
I see.
as if, the town planner shall plant the tree. So that didn't seem appropriate.
Right, but on that, I totally get that. That makes sense to me. But is it? I mean, I know, for example, street trees. You submit to the town, they come along, they plant them, they water them. It's like this magical program. You get a tree. Would the town actually be responsible also for the costs of planting the trees? I mean, is this on the town to do? Just do we need CHA to say we're ready, the site's ready for the trees now?
Yes.
Okay.
So with the mitigation fees, that covers to have the town purchase the trees and plant the trees.
Okay. And Mr. Eifler, I presume are you okay with that as a plan?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, good. Free trees, right? Okay, great. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? If not, Elizabeth, I'll tell you my sort of more Scrivener's edits. I had a couple where they occurred in two places. Anybody else?
Okay.
Okay, I think it's on page, let's see. Oh, it's on page 2, and under the discussion of 10.1, third paragraph, where the engineering division, I think it should say, in the second sentence, the engineering division has reviewed the plan and insert the word and notes with the infiltration. And then in the next sentence, it says, well, engineering division does not agree that this is the best location for it. The location does not violate any known with an N regulations. Those two sentences appear later in the document as well.
Which I think Linda.
Or did you catch this?
Linda caught the first and.
Oh, okay.
Is that right? Yes. And no. Okay.
That's it. So if there's no further discussion or any comments from the applicant or from you, Elizabeth, I could move forward and seek a motion. Okay. Well, then, let's see. Does anybody want to make the motion? If not,
I can make a motion.
Thank you, Kristen.
Sorry, it's not right there. I'd like to recommend that the board accepts this recommendation for, I'm going to do this wrong because I don't see it in here.
So it's it will just be moved to recommend to the Zoning Board of Appeals a special permit to develop a 2-unit planned residential development
Got it.
at
Move.
365 Com Ave, pursuant to the recommendation letter as amended this evening.
Okay, do you want me to state that all again, or can I say moved?
You can say moved, and Nancy will make it. Nancy will make it happen.
Thank you. I was all ready to do it when I realized it wasn't specifically laid out for me.
And I'll second that.
All right, Andrew, that's 1 point for Andrew. He seconds it. I will take the vote. Starting with Linda. How say you?
Yes.
Thank you. Andrew,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Nathan.
Yes.
I don't see Kate, so I'm also a yes. So with that, we send you on to the ZBA, Mr. Eifler, and best of luck and with the approval and this great project. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The next item is an A&R for plan number 21-4, 821 Strawberry Hill Road, parcel 1971-2-5. So Elizabeth, do you want to walk us through this? I appreciate getting all of this in advance. So that was good.
Give me 2 seconds. So can everybody see the full screen?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so this property is located at the corner of Strawberry Hill Road and Channing Road. Channing Road is the last road on the left. Strawberry Hill Road as before you get to the Acton Town Line and Pope Road. Well, at least in Concord. And I can bring up the agenda. At least I think I can. Can you see the agenda, or is it still the plan?
Still the plan.
Still the plan.
Shows you I am not Zoom savvy. Okay, so this is the property. This is Strawberry Hill Road. The town lines right here. The property is in the Residence AA Zone District. There is a wetland and associated wetland conservancy district that runs along the back of the property. Okay, and the applicant is proposing to divide the lot and create, oops, sorry. All right, let's try that one more time. There we go. Divide the lot, creating a new lot at the rear of the property with frontage on Channing Road. Each of the lots have the required frontage, which is 200 feet, and the required area, which is 80,000 square feet. 50% of that has to be upland, which both lots meet that. Both Strawberry Hill Road and Channing Road are accepted public ways.
Okay. It would appear that it meets the dimensional requirements, both in terms of frontage size and size net of wetland. Does anybody have any questions? All right, then I'll make a motion that the planning board should endorse, or should move to endorse the plan by Stamsky and McNary, titled Plan of Land, Concord, Massachusetts for Fishermen, dated September 10th, 2021, and owned by Moon Owl Realty LLC, as approval not required because the plan is not a subdivision, because it shows the division of land so that every lot shown has the required frontage as required by the Concord zoning bylaw on an adequate public way, and authorize the chair, clerk, or town planner to endorse the plan. Thank you. Ms. Pabasha.
Burton, can I ask that, so I won't be able to go into the office, but Marcia will be there. So if the chair, clerk, town planner, or DPLM director.
Sure. Yeah, I'd modify that
Okay.
motion, Nathan, if it's acceptable to you, to authorize the chair, clerk, town planner, or the director of planning and land management to endorse the plan.
Thank you.
I still second it.
Thank you. All right. Now I have, sorry, moved my computer and lost my screen, but what, all right, we'll go around the room. I'll start with Linda.
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Nathan,
Yes.
and I am a yes. And just double checking to make sure Kate hasn't joined us. All right, so then that has a unanimous approval to endorse. So thank you very much. And we're done with item number 2. Right. item number 3 is to visit once again the Envision Concord focus updates to see where we are on the planning board action items. And Elizabeth, just help me put 2 and 2 together. So is this the document that we'll be providing to the select board, or they need like a write-up, correct, in advance of their November meeting, or is this?
No, this is what I'll be providing to the select board, which
Wonderful.
I think is going to be
We're
so
gonna
much more detail than any other board or committee. So
we're gonna get an A, right?
you
Maybe
are,
an A plus.
everybody will be jealous.
Maybe
Um,
maybe circulate it to all the other committee chairs the night before the meeting.
Okay.
Just to put panic. Okay.
So at the last meeting, I went through and updated some of these and also talked about updating how it's viewed because and I have to find a better color for completed because that is just not working.
Yeah.
Because some of these, like 6 years completed, in progress. So the discussion last time was changing how these were viewed so that you could include these multi-tiered items to show how you've moved forward and things, and how you're still moving forward with other things.
Okay.
So
I think it looks
before I send it, I may try and play with the colors one more time because I'm going to print it and see what it looks like, because I don't know if it's my laptop, but like right now, 6 years is supposed to be red and it looks pink to me.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like when you are notating or document in Word and you click something as resolved and then it fades out. It's very faded.
So it's all supposed to, so like red. So I'm gonna have to play with that. I
Okay.
just don't know how.
Well, I thought the content of it, maybe the color formatting is one thing, but the content I thought was really good. I know we've been through this twice previously, but with this new format in terms of using the notation to identify what timeline we're on, does anybody have any further suggestions for improvement or otherwise comments to the substance of this column D?
Are we clear what we're acting upon? Was there any kind of surprises when we looked at this again?
Not for me. Other than we've got a lot, we have a lot of work in front of us, and this is a really good way to have a checkpoint on the committee's work.
Mhm.
The only thing I noticed, is like the far out, let's say 3 to 5 and 6 years. There's a couple as far as 3 to 5, but there really is only like 1 6-year goal. So I don't know if the board wants to kind of go through some of these empty ones to see if that might be something you want to task a future planning board into looking at, because currently nobody who sits on the board now will be here in 6 years. I won't even be here in 6 years. So that was really kind of the only thing that stood out to me to answer Kristen's question.
And I'm sorry, that there are a few things that we have not designated, or that there are that there are a few things that we are foisting onto a board yet to be appointed.
No. So let me see. So this item,
Mhm.
I'm not sure what role the planning board even has with this, other than possibly coordinating with the Public Works Commission and the Public Works Department, but so
Yeah, you know, when I look at those things, they are sort of less a goal which would be identified as a concrete action item, such as the one at number one immediately above, that is a change to zoning, as guiding principles for the other actions we do. You know, enhancing public spaces, for example. I don't know that there is, you know, as a board, you know, we don't have spending authority or anything like that, that there is anything other than considering that, if, for example, we're looking at how zoning should be aligned and putting, you know, buildings meeting the sidewalk versus parking lots up front or things like that. That's my thought. I looked at it and it seemed to me like, well, what would be the concrete thing that we would have in mind in 18 months or 6 years, whatever it may be. And I don't know if there is anything
So
concrete.
I would like to add like no action recommended or something, or put something in that column so we don't have to have the discussion every year. Or, you know, we could do it with the detail that you said is not a planning board action or planning board guiding principle.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to have something there so we don't have the same discussion each time.
I think that's a good suggestion. Thank you, Kristen.
So I think, so like, so another committee, but not necessarily naming who that committee is, and just say, just a planning board. What was your,
Technically, I guess it should be removed from our list if we're really not going to take action on it. I mean, you could even do like a strike through or something.
definitely, I mean, you can,
Because
You
if we're
can
not going
remove
to take
this.
action on it, I think it should just come off the list.
which,
Yeah, I would agree
yeah,
with
that is that is an option. So how this original list got developed was just taking the action items from the long range plan and pulling out every single one where the
That
planning
reference
board.
planning board, right? Yeah.
Right, so
And
that's where I do think this is another committee, and it's just a planning board.
it's almost like the planning board should be aware that this is going to take place on another committee type thing.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't think it needs to be on our actions list. Well, you could
Well-
make a second tab of removed actions if you wanted to.
Well, I think because in the long range plan, the planning board is, actually referenced.
What about a notation, something along the lines of no specific action identified at this time? Because I am a little hesitant to take it off, in part because I don't want to go back through. I mean, some of these could very well be the next one down, as an example. Support growth of business within existing by outlining development guidelines for appropriate potential infill development. Well, that very well could be the planning board. That we could even argue that that's part of what we're doing at the Thoreau Business District. But I would honestly feel a little bit better keeping them in, but just noting that we're not taking any. There's no sort of intent to take action that we're aware of.
That works for me.
Kristen, what are your thoughts?
I'm fine with that.
I mean, I remember, Kristen, as I'm sure you do, the way these things sort of got on our list was we went through and looked at the entire master plan, tagged things, and we used kind of a pretty general filter to put things in our bucket. And we got a lot of things because, you know, we are the sort of the implementation committee of the general long range plan in many respects. And I think that these are good things. Like for example, what I imagine this could be is next year coming back and you know, the committee as it's constituted at that time, looking at this table, and it's sort of good to have the history and also just to see these ideas that, oh, well, what could we be doing for business centers or infill development and so forth. So I want to keep it in the document, but without a specific expectation of a concrete action.
So to Kristen's point, I mean, do you want to put this to be like a 3 to 5 year? I mean, just put something in these blank spaces. So as Kristen said, they're not being revisited every year, or?
I'm a little confused by the question. Putting in 3 to 5 years, or I thought other ones that were blank, we sort of hadn't come up with a timeline on because they were too open-ended or too general,
Right.
or there wasn't right. So I would use that same notation, no specific action for each of those.
Okay. I mean, there's not too many blanks, so.
Now, this one, incentivize or otherwise enable alternative housing development. That one, I do feel like we're a little closer to, right? I mean, if anything, I mean, it's a little bit talking about what you know, the work that Kate has been doing on identifying greater incentives under the PRD process.
Yeah, that one should definitely have something, because I think we are going to try to propose a zoning bylaw amendment or something that certainly encourages that, and probably in the near future. So I don't know if you would consider that in progress in terms of our research is in progress. What was the other one? What, or 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, I'm with you, Kristen. I do think that this is a 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 year thing because I think people are going to be looking increasingly to making PRD a more attractive alternative, but also more effective in accomplishing town goals. And that's, I mean, that research is ongoing, and I would bet, I bet Kate will definitely advance that over the next year. I mean, not on her own, but with the board's support. Does anybody else have a view on this particular item?
Just wondering, how many other things do we have listed as 1 to 2 years on there?
Let me see. 1, 2, 3. Oh, even I'm going too fast. Sorry. Irritates my husband. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So related to this, I apologize, I missed the last meeting and I didn't watch the whole recording yet. Did we decide we're not having a special town meetings, that the Thoreau Business District is going to happen at regular town meeting?
We've had,
Go ahead, Burton. I'm
I
not
think-
aware of this select board discussing a special town meeting
yeah.
for fall.
And in fact, Kristen, sort of the other direction, the concern from the board was that it would be very beneficial to have another public in-person meeting with a charrette and you know, a larger audience, and that under the present circumstances, we wouldn't feel comfortable having that. But we would want to do that before submission of an article. Yeah, so that raises, I mean, I'm very keen to have an article for the 2022 AGM or annual town meeting. AGM is, I guess, a corporate term, annual town meeting. And so that may, you know, we definitely wouldn't be ready for any kind of fall
Yeah.
special town meeting.
Well, and I wonder if we'd even be ready for if we had a meeting in the spring. I don't know if it's still going to be in the summer, because if it's in the spring, that warrant closes in, isn't it January or something?
Yeah, it's currently scheduled for the spring.
Right.
So
So that means our public meeting, would still be in the near future, you know, so.
it'd be between now and January. Yeah.
And don't we face the same issues where we're not collecting everybody together? Or this would be online though, right?
No, Nate and others suggested this would be really beneficial to advance the conversation in person. But we're gonna have to play it as things unfold.
And the only reason I ask, it's not to get too far off topic. I'm just kind of thinking about our in progress versus 1 to 3 years. And I didn't know if the Thoreau Business District was now kind of being a further out goal. That's kind of why I was asking about it now. So.
Based on the information we have now, I would still anticipate it being a article for the 2022 annual town meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so we still have some blanks here. Elizabeth, you're moving around and protect and retain lands. Okay. Yep, I think that's.
I think it's
Does the planning board recommend, parcels to look out for?
as far as agricultural uses,
Yeah.
generally no.
Okay.
It's generally led by, would be led by those entities.
On the 2229 Main Street, I mean, I guess our role will be to, I mean, there would be a site plan, right? That would be the resolution with respect to the planning board action, right?
It all depends on how the zoning for that gets developed. I can't say, is it gonna be, is it gonna be zoned and then put out to bid for a private developer, or is it gonna go through town meeting? As far as development proposals, I can't tell you. I can't tell you what the process is going to be to develop that property at this time.
Okay, but we do know that the process will be a definitive recommendation to the town from the 229 Main Street Committee. And that they will probably seek input from the planning board. It will probably be formal, a letter of support or recommended actions. I mean, they've already reached out to us previously. And then it would be, so I guess it would seem to be appropriate to say, to provide input to the 229 Main Street Committee and consider, well, it's not really a planning board item that we need to highlight, but, ultimately to the degree there are site plan or other zoning approvals that are required, consider those in due course. But I get, that's sort of outside the scope of this, seems to me.
I don't,
I think this next one, I'm not so sure why this is on the planning board's list.
I don't know. What was the term we used? No,
What was it?
No immediate action taken, maybe?
No
No
specific PB.
am I making everybody dizzy and nauseous yet?
We're all, this is what we all do all day, at least what I do all day long. I've got my sea legs.
Yeah.
And I don't see how the planning board's involved with evaluating and integrating the complete streets design standards.
Yeah.
Who does
Except,
that?
except maybe, when the board updates its subdivision rules and regs.
So where does complete streets fall? Because we used to talk about more, is it the planning department?
Public Works.
It works.
Yeah, I think that this, while we may be updating our subdivision regs and some of those complete street things, this action is not just saying adopt complete streets, it's saying for enhanced multimodal transportation options and leverage program funding. So I don't think this is a planning board action item, and I would give the same no specific PB action. I do the same here for the electric vehicle charging.
Does the planning board have anything to do with recommending the location of charging stations? Do we have anything in our zoning bylaws about it?
Not on public property, and right?
Not on public property, no. That's all CMLP.
Okay.
Arguably, we could be recommending, under publicly funded development. For example, the PRD we just looked at, we could have said that it should be built with, it should be ready for EV charging infrastructure.
Well,
Which is-
that and multi-family housing, it would be nice to see that, but I don't think we have anything specifically called out in this. That would support kind of the larger goal right there, 5, develop an approach to parking that balances, and it kind of supports that a little bit, but well, not really.
I think that if anything, we could say that, and this isn't the exact wording, Elizabeth, so don't write this down, but that
Okay.
take into account, the planning board, to take into account the creation of charging infrastructure as part of its, what are the
Site
design-
plan review.
Yeah, site plan review, site plan or PRD review, where we have that, where we've now input that we will take into, I forget the exact term we ultimately settled on, but like not green design or sustainable and resilient design. You get what I'm poking at, but we'll evaluate as a factor the installation of charging facilities as part of site plan and PRD reviews. I think in any significant PRD we've looked at recently, or site plans as well, that is definitely a question that one or more members have raised. Yeah.
So as far as the evaluation of preferred parking in public parking lots, that is definitely not within the planning board's. I don't see why the planning board was included in this action item, but
I'm gonna guess because there wasn't another committee to hand it out to, and maybe, except for maybe Public Works.
I'm gonna go with no specific action identified at this time because I can't think of where
Yeah.
the planning board would be involved with this.
I do feel like I have an issue with, oh, did we jump? Oh, yeah, where did we go?
So, no, sorry. There you go.
I don't know where like 5 in column D came, like that specific wording came from, and this is just like not a meaningful necessarily point, but like balance where it was says develop an approach to parking that balances the principles of sustainability with the town's economic goals, implying those two are at odds. I just sort of on principle take issue with that.
That would have been wording that was, drafted by the outside planning firm and was signed off on by the long range planning committee. Sort of with tons of input from the public.
But yeah, I mean, I get that
I
we
take your
probably
point.
can't change it, but do you know what I mean?
On record.
For the record,
For the record,
Haley
And,
believes that
like,
these
that's an
principles can
old
be
school mentality, right?
multipliers of economic development, not hindrances, right?
Right.
Yeah, maybe when it gets updated again next time, we'll kind of listen to all these things.
Yeah. Now, number 1 is interesting. Develop plans to decrease the demand for parking. Elsewhere, we have in this list, right, Elizabeth, we talked about updating the parking requirements, right? Now, that's different than demand management.
Correct.
Except to the extent, I do, I view things where we talk, a lot of the things we've talked about in terms of creating more density in village centers, creating, housing and it's walkable to transit and the like is demand management. But I'm just wondering what our answer was for the other parking piece, because I know that was somewhere else in here, or at least I believe it was. Oh, it's right below it, 2 down.
Right there in 3, that's in progress.
Yeah.
Develop plans to decrease the demand for parking. Well, the Comprehensive Sustainable Energy Committee does a lot in terms of customer education, resident education. I wouldn't consider what they're doing developing plans. I don't know, that's just an unusual term.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to approach
Right.
this one.
We could do the
One
no
idea.
specific.
Yeah, one real way to, and it's not so much even for the planning board, but we got the grant to do the commuter shuttle that got taken away. If that grant program opens up, we were hopeful that that shuttle would decrease the demand for parking. Looking at walkability and to help decrease the demand for parking. I think even the Assabet River Bridge. So people have a safe path to go from the commuter rail to 310 Baker Ave. Hopefully that is a way to decrease demand for parking. Because currently, in the wintertime, people aren't going to walk, but if they had a nice, path that got plowed, maybe they would. So that's the only
But none of that's direct planning board stuff.
Right.
It's, and I do believe we've got our actions around parking captured 2 lines below.
So are we gonna go with no specific action?
That would be my
Think so.
recommendation. Okay. I think we've now closed all our boxes. Oh, one more.
We have been doing this, right? I mean, that's why we've been doing the multifamily housing, 2-family housing,
Yeah,
accessory
agree.
dwelling. I mean, conceivably, it could still be in progress because we're,
Yeah, I think those are excellent points, Kristen. I would be putting that together with the TBD redevelopment zoning is exactly what, in my mind, that's all about.
right, yeah, let's make sure that's on there as an in progress, yeah. But it's interesting because here it's actually talking about the permitting process, not necessarily the zoning, but the permitting process. And how's that?
Yeah, so no, I get your point. That, I mean, from a permitting process, what the board, the additional dwelling, that was definitely a permitting streamlined process because it went from special permit to by right.
Okay, good, yep.
So I definitely think that's a streamline. And even, even the 2-family, while it's a special permit, it wasn't permitted before. So maybe.
I mean, if we're saying discourage new subdivisions, we are somewhat aiming to do that by updating the subdivision, or at least like making sure we're getting subdivisions we actually want.
Well, but this is specifically in certain areas, like for the reasons of preserving, right? Preserving outlying areas.
Okay.
Discourage distant housing or new subdivisions. I'm reading that as outside of village centers.
Hmm.
Okay. I mean, is that
I like it.
and not to say that, I mean, just because something got completed that, no, I mean, you could probably you could add something like that.
I did tell him I was gonna come in and see him when I was done.
Does that work?
I'm all right with that.
Yeah, and to that point, I think we do want to make sure that it's noted if we aren't done with something else important. The parking was the big one. Anything related to sustainability and energy efficiency are big ones that we want to make sure that are clearly noted.
So is there something you want me to add in another spot, Kristen?
No, I suppose not. I mean, just that, we pick this up once a year and like, oh yeah, we're still working on that. I mean, we do a good job with the goals and everything like that, so.
Elizabeth, I mean, when we get our new building codes coming out of the climate bill, like, will it just be like a simple, replace all references to the new one, or will there be any need to, like, and it's hard to say maybe, but like update things based on that?
I'm not sure at this point. So when, as far as the updated building code comes out, I mean, the discussion is to have something further than the stretch code.
Yeah.
But, so that's just, I don't think there's anything in zoning where, in the zoning bylaw that specifically references the stretch code. I think so far, everything you've developed just around the sustainability, people say, building to the stretch code or building beyond the stretch code, or so there's nothing, I don't think there's anything in zoning that specifically has to change because of the building code changes. Was that your question, Haley?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's just, to your point of like, we have nothing that is super far out, but it's in my mind, like, things could change just so dramatically, even in the next few years, with what we're able to do. Like with regard to sustainability and,
Yeah.
with once like more of the climate bill becomes real.
Well, what was it, Illinois? Yeah, Illinois. They just passed a fossil fuel free by 2045, the state.
Yeah, it's happening.
All right, I'm good. I will play with the colors. And try and figure this out. Maybe I'll try highlighting in different colors instead of. Anyway, all right. So if the board's good with this, I will play with the colors one more time and then send this along to the select board for the November get together.
I'm good. I think it looks great. Thank you for all your work on it, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And before I forget, save.
Okay. That brings us to the draft meeting minutes from the executive session and September 14th, July, that there was a small edit that was made at my request to those executive session minutes. I am now good with them. Thank you. Elizabeth, did anybody else have any comments to those minutes? Okay. I'll make a motion that the board approve as drafted and circulated to in advance of this meeting, the July 12th, 2021 executive session minutes.
Second,
Thank you, Kristen. All right, Linda.
Do we need to
Yes.
say that it won't be released at this time?
No, because you actually have to vote to release them. So that's not included in Burton's motion.
Okay,
Oh.
but thank you for asking. I did not know how
Yeah.
that worked. Okay, so, Linda,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Kristen,
yes,
Haley,
Yes.
Nathan,
Yes,
and I am a yes. So those are done. Thank you.
And
September 14th.
which you don't have, so they'll
Okay.
be on your next your next meeting.
Okay, great. Which I think brings us to staff or committee member updates. I don't have the actual agenda in front of me, but I believe that's our last item. Is that right?
Yes.
I'll just say that it's now CPC season, Community Preservation Committee season. We received all of our applications. The deadline was about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and we had our walk around town to look at projects. And as I was talking before the meeting got started, whoever's on the board and is thinking about committees to be on in the future, the CPC is great, and it's really fun to go around town and look at these different projects. The total funding requests came in pretty high at about, I think it's about $2.6 million. In typical years, the amount of funds we have ranges between about 1.6 and 1.8 million, but there was a new funding mechanism that was put in place at the state level. And we received some funds back from projects that didn't spend them. And we also last year placed funds in a sort of a reserve fund for future land acquisition or affordable housing spending, I believe were the two allowed purposes. So it could be, we'll surely need to cut back on some of the projects, but some very interesting ones, including a potential large land acquisition and with it is a combined conservation, affordable housing, maybe some recreation elements in West Concord, which is a $1 million request for about a $2.5 million acquisition, which is kind of exciting. So lots going on at CPC, and this is our fast season where we start meeting once a week and create our article by January.
Oh, Burton, sorry, I spaced out there for a second. Did you say that the upland parcel was included in there?
The upland parcel is included, yeah. So that's an interesting thing with funding coming from lots of different sources, but $1 million being requested from CPC. That's the largest request I've seen outside of the Junction Village affordable housing, which was spread over 3 years. So this is would need to be a 1-year appropriation, and it's a biggie, but we'll see how that goes through. I want to be clear, we haven't actually met to discuss the proposals yet. We've just gone around town and looked at them and reviewed the applications. So no idea how that will come out. That's it for me, but I'll have lots more over the coming months, I'm sure. Elizabeth or anybody else? Yes.
Go ahead, Linda.
Oh,
Linda.
I had 2 items. One is I had hoped to volunteer to be the liaison to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee and the Affordable Housing Group overall. And so I was hopeful that people would be affirmative on that. And then secondly, there, I believe, was a meeting of the Hanscom Area Towns Committee, but I was unable to attend. And I don't know if Linda Escobedo might want to make any comments since she chairs that committee, but those were my 2 issues to bring up.
Linda, thank you. And I really, really like that. It's amazing to me that we don't have a representative that liaises directly between affordable housing, the affordable housing committees and planning. So I think that is a great idea. Elizabeth, do we need to do anything formal to say we're going to have a liaison to?
No, I mean, you can, the planning board can, I mean, you can decide to, have a liaison to any committee in town. It's a board member would attend those meetings and then, provide input, and then come back and report back to the planning board. They're not
Okay.
technically a member of that committee. They
Right.
don't have any voting requirements, and
Right.
they just provide updates on what the planning board is doing and
So-
answer questions.
Okay, so I always get a little confused because there's the CHA, the CD, the CHDC, and then there is a committee, right? The
So
Affordable
there's
Housing-
the Affordable Housing Trust Committee being formed.
being
um,
formed,
and
and that's what. Sorry.
there isn't a planning board member on that committee either. But that's when I did speak to Liz Rust at the RHSO when Linda asked me about this, and she definitely thinks that having a planning board liaison to the Affordable Housing Trust Committee is a fantastic idea. And not so much the Concord Housing Trust, because that's just a funding, a funding group. And then, possibly the Concord Housing Development Corporation, because they do projects. So, but I'm not sure how most of their projects would be probably a special permit. So I would have to think about that and how a planning board member could participate.
And Linda, did you have one in mind out of those 4 organizations?
I was on the Affordable Housing Trust Advisory Committee in terms of the creation of the trust. So I think that is natural. But in doing that, I became somewhat familiar with the other committees. So I have worked through the complexities a bit. And I think it's really my ability to observe them. They do coordinate pretty well together, mostly through Liz, because it's to their advantage to do that. So it's but I wouldn't want to show up at these meetings. I would just be then representing myself. And in this case, I could at least say I'm here on the behest of the planning committee. It's not that I'm view it that I'd have any active role, but more that I would be observing on our behalf as opposed to it just as an individual. So that's the issue.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And I think that, as we were just seeing from the planning goals that we were looking at, one of those things was to improve communication between boards and committees and town departments. And I recall that there was a failure in communication around affordable housing issues when the town was acquiring the Warner Pond parcel. That the affordable housing community was not brought into that discussion until quite late in the game. I think it would be great if the affordable housing community knew, for example, what we're looking to do in the Thoreau Business District, or as our discussions of 2-family housing or what have you. So while you'd be an observer, also be able to be there and answer questions or raise points that are germane to their discussion, I think would be very helpful. So I think that would be great if you, yeah.
Yeah. So every year the board kind of goes through your liaison list.
Yeah.
And even CSEC, the planning board member isn't a designated member of CSEC, but it's good for a member to go to that. So I think you would just add affordable housing groups as as one of your standing liaisons that you go through every year.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you very much for raising your hand to do this, Linda Miller. And with that, Linda Escobedo, did you want to update us on Hanscom?
Yes, and I'd also like to comment on the discussion you just had as well. As you know, there's 2 different Hanscom committees. One is the Hanscom Fields Advisory Committee, and then the other one is the Hanscom Area Towns Committee, and the Planning Board has a representative on the Hanscom Area Towns Committee. The most likely first meeting of the season will occur later in October.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think.
And the Hanscom Area Advisory Committee, Fields Advisory Committee, just met last week. And in fact, there are an increasing number of concerns about noise level from planes. So that gets dealt with at that committee more specifically.
Thank you.
So then the other thing I'd like to comment on in terms of just the discussion you had about communication with all the housing groups. I mean, certainly the housing groups are looking to the planning board for leadership, as you've been displaying the last couple of years in terms of the zoning bylaw amendments that have come to town meeting as a way to facilitate more affordable housing, and that's been excellent. And as Elizabeth pointed out, Liz Russ is an important point of contact for all of these housing groups, and calls all the housing groups together at least 2 or 3 times during the year. And so that's another place where the planning board maybe could visit and also present topics like the Thoreau Depot and other topics that you might want the housing groups to be aware of collectively. And I know that, and Elizabeth can probably come on this as well as I, those joint meetings typically occur before town meeting and intentionally occur at least before town meeting, so that the housing groups are informed about the discussions of anything that potentially will impact housing. So that's one comment I would make. And then the other comment is that the Elizabeth was correct, or Linda, both of you commenting about the Affordable Housing Trust has just had its first meeting. We'll have the second meeting this week. These meetings have basically been organizational because there are legal and some other things that have to occur before we can actually go into action. But theoretically, that will be a point where other committees are coming for funding, should funding be available. So, you know, a liaison to that committee would always be welcome, I think. But we're just now getting organized.
So, Linda, I do know that on the main page for the town's website under Notify Me, the Affordable Housing Trust has been added. So you could sign up for Notify Me, and then, you know, when they post a meeting or post something to the website, you could get a notification.
Okay, I will do that.
Yeah, because the Affordable Housing Trust won't be staffed through the planning division. I believe it's through the town manager's office, correct, Linda?
It's still being worked on, right? And I think some of that had to do just with the demands that are already on planning department and Liz's role and so forth. You know, Linda Miller was an incredible resource on the Affordable Housing Study Committee that got the trust launched. So certainly comes with some good background there.
Thank you.
One last comment, and then I just thought of
Thank
it. And the Housing Foundation was the other group that I didn't hear anyone mention. And they are also included in those joint meetings that occur at least 2 or 3 times a year. And that would be the full complement then of all the housing groups sort of meeting together.
There's a lot.
There is, and they all have different purposes. But I think whoever made the comment that we manage somehow to work reasonably well together, I think is accurate.
That's good to hear. Okay, I guess at this moment, I think we've gotten through any committee comments, and Elizabeth, you didn't have anything further, right? Any general public comments? I see we have 3 members of the public. If anybody like to make a comment, raise your hand or unmute yourself. And if not,
I just have a question before we go.
Please.
I don't want to interrupt any public talking. Elizabeth, do you know kind of what we have to look forward to in the next couple of meetings?
Yes. So I think Monday, was it Monday? I think it was Monday. Friday, I don't know. An application, a definitive subdivision for road improvement to Sunnyside Lane was submitted. And so that's currently being distributed to town staff for comment, but that won't be on your agenda till November. And we're still in discussions with the developers of 48Y Fitchburg Turnpike. Although that was continued out to October 12th, I don't see them being in a position to submit anything different. So I believe it's going to once again be a discussion with the developer and the attorney with withdrawing without prejudice, and then filing something, when they're ready with something different. I'm incredibly hesitant to continue it out another 3 months.
Well,
For them-
is there a limit by which it cannot be continued?
No,
Oh,
so long
really?
as if they, well, yes, there's a limit. The board could say, no, we're not going to accept, a time extension, and, we're going to take action. So that's the board's prerogative. An applicant can ask for a continuance and provide a time extension. It's the board's prerogative whether to continue an application or not. So that's on the horizon. And then at your next meeting will be again the thorough business district discussion, and having more finalized zoning and the design guidelines, which this is an update, Burton, but a conversation with MAPC, I had talked about, they're really not guidelines if this is what the board's expecting somebody to develop. If they're included in the zoning bylaw, they can be called design requirements. If they're not included in the zoning bylaw, then they have to be called design guidelines. And that is so that nothing runs afoul with the Attorney General. So there are sections in the zoning bylaw where there are design requirements. And so I think that's kind of just needs to be a conversation whether the discussion to have them outside of the zoning bylaw was so that the board could be more reactive to updating them, because it would only require a public hearing and not a vote at town meeting. So that's kind of something to think about for your next meeting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay. And so design guidelines are more or less what exists in West Concord today, right?
Right, but for all intents and purposes, I mean, when somebody calls up and wants to develop something in West Concord, we say, don't go any further with anything until you read and understand the West Concord design guidelines, because
Right.
that's what that's what you're going to need to follow. So there's no reason to think that the Thoreau Business Depot, should this move forward, wouldn't be the same. Okay.
But maybe there might be individual elements that we would make a requirement that could be pulled down. No parking between the street and the business.
Right. So that's kind of what I'm filtering through right now is,
Okay.
That's not a guideline. That's,
That's foundational. Yeah.
Yeah. If something gets redeveloped at Crosby's, we don't want parking between the street and the building.
Right. Okay. Well, look forward to continued discussion on that. Kristen, you missed quite a discussion on that last time.
What?
Okay. And that next meeting's in 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll be at that. And then Nathan, then you have the baton on the one after that. And then everybody have a nice next 2 weeks. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks. Good
Thanks.
night.
Good
Yeah,
night.
everybody.